The Krethik warship moved through the darkness of space like a hunting predator. Its sensors had detected something unusual near the border region, something that did not belong. Commander Vextal stood on the bridge, his scaled hands gripping the command rail as he studied the display before him. There, spinning slowly in the void, was a human vessel. The ship was damaged. Scorch marks covered its hull. One of its engine sections was completely dark. Small debris floated around it, pieces of armor, plating, and shattered equipment. The vessel was silent, its distress beacon no longer transmitting. It looked like it had been in a serious fight and lost. "Scan it completely," Vextal ordered. His voice was cold and efficient. "I want to know everything about that ship." The sensor officer worked quickly, her claws moving across the controls. "It is a human warship, Commander. Classification reads as UNSS Sentinel. No life signs detected aboard. The crew has abandoned the vessel." Vextal felt a surge of satisfaction. For months, the Krethik Dominion had watched Earth carefully. Humans were new to space travel, new to the complex politics of the galaxy. They were weak and inexperienced. But they were also growing quickly, establishing colonies and trade routes. Some in the Dominion feared that humans might become a threat someday. This was a perfect opportunity. A human warship, abandoned and helpless. They could take it, study it, learn all of Earth's military secrets. They could understand human technology and tactics before humans became strong enough to challenge the Dominion. "Deploy the capture cables," Vextal commanded. "We are taking that ship back to Station Krell 9. The operation took 3 hours. Massive cables extended from the Krethik vessel and attached to the human ship's hull. Slowly, carefully, they began towing the Sentinel toward the nearest Krethik research station. Vextal watched the entire process, his mind already planning the investigation to come. Station Krell 9 was enormous, a construction of metal and technology that housed thousands of Krethik scientists and military personnel. When the Sentinel arrived, teams were already waiting. Lead scientist Corvin stood in the docking bay, his eyes bright with curiosity and ambition. "A human warship," Corvin said, his voice filled with excitement. "Intact and ready for examination. This will advance our understanding significantly." The Krethik worked efficiently. They attached boarding tunnels to the Sentinel's airlocks and entered the dark corridors inside. Emergency lights glowed dimly, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air was cold but breathable. Everything was still and silent. Corvin led the first team through the ship. They carried scanning equipment and recording devices, documenting everything they found. The corridors were narrower than Krethik ships, built for smaller human bodies. The design was clean and organized, every system labeled clearly in multiple languages. "Begin with the weapons systems," Corvin ordered. "I want complete analysis of their offensive capabilities." The weapons team moved toward the gun decks. They found railguns, missile tubes, and energy weapons. The technology was good, surprisingly sophisticated for such a young species. But nothing revolutionary, nothing that would threaten Krethik superiority. "The weapons are adequate," the weapons specialist reported. "Similar to what we expected. Perhaps slightly more efficient in energy consumption, but not dramatically superior to our own systems." Corvin nodded. That was good news. Humans were not as dangerous as some had feared. But as he walked deeper into the ship, he began to notice something strange. The weapons sections were relatively small. Compared to Krethik warships of similar size, the Sentinel devoted much less space to guns and missiles. So where was all that extra space being used? He found the first answer in a massive section near the ship's center. The doors were marked with symbols he recognized as medical indicators. When he entered, his eyes widened in confusion. The medical bay was enormous. Beds lined the walls, hundreds of them. Equipment filled every corner, sophisticated machines for surgery, diagnosis, and treatment. There were supplies for dozens of different species, not just humans. Medications, surgical tools, emergency equipment. The space was larger than some Krethic hospital ships. "Why would a warship need this much medical capacity?" one of his assistants asked. Corvin did not have an answer. Krethic warships had small medical sections, enough to treat their own wounded crew. But this was something else entirely. This was built to handle thousands of casualties, to treat injuries from multiple species with different biologies. They moved deeper into the ship. The next discovery was equally confusing. Massive cargo holds filled with supplies, not weapons or ammunition, but basic necessities. Food packages, water purification systems, emergency shelters, construction materials, rescue equipment. Everything was organized carefully, labeled for rapid deployment. "This makes no sense," Corvin muttered. "This is a warship. Why is it carrying refugee supplies?" The engineering section provided another puzzle. Yes, there were systems for repairing the Sentinel itself, but there were also tools and equipment designed for working on other ships, ships with completely different designs, universal docking clamps, adaptable power couplers, repair modules that could interface with dozens of different technologies. By the end of the first day, Corvin was deeply troubled. He stood in the ship's command center, reading through the computer systems. The Sentinel's mission logs were partially intact. He accessed them carefully, translating the human language into something he could understand. What he read changed everything. 3 weeks ago, a Krethic mining colony on the edge of Dominion space had suffered a catastrophic accident. Their reactor had failed. Thousands of colonists were dying slowly, their life support systems failing. The colony had sent desperate distress calls, begging for help. The Dominion had received those calls. Vextal himself had seen the reports. The decision had been simple and logical. The colony was too far away, too expensive to save. Resources would be better spent elsewhere. The colonists were weak, unable to survive on their own. They were not worth saving. The colony had been written off, left to die in the darkness. But the Sentinel had heard those distress calls too. And Lieutenant Commander Park Min-jun had made a different decision. He had taken his ship across dozens of light years, racing to save people who were not even human, racing to save Krethic lives that the Krethic themselves had abandoned. The Sentinel had been damaged in a spatial anomaly on the way to the rescue. That was why it was drifting, why the crew had evacuated. Corvin stared at the screen for a long time. Then he turned and walked quickly toward Commander Vextal's office. They needed to talk immediately, because Corvin had just realized something terrifying. This was not a warship, not in any sense the Krethic understood. This was something entirely different, something that challenged everything the Dominion believed about power and strength and survival. And that made it the most dangerous thing Corvin had ever seen. Commander Vextal listened to Corvin's report with growing unease. The scientist stood before him, his normally confident demeanor replaced with something that looked almost like fear. "You are telling me this warship was trying to save our colonists?" Vextal asked. "The same colonists we abandoned 3 weeks ago?" "Yes, Commander." Corvin displayed the mission logs on the wall screen. Lieutenant Commander Park Min-jun received the distress signal and immediately diverted his ship. He was attempting a rescue mission when his vessel was damaged by a spatial anomaly. His crew evacuated, but their mission was clear. They were coming to save Krethic lives. Vextal felt cold anger building inside him. Why would they do this? What strategic advantage does it give them? Are they trying to gain intelligence from our colonists? Win political favor? Corvin shook his head slowly. "I have studied their entire database, Commander. There is no hidden agenda, no strategic calculation. They were simply responding to a distress call. According to human military protocol, any vessel in distress must be helped, regardless of species or political affiliation." "That is insane," Vextal said. That is inefficient. That is weakness. Perhaps, Corvin replied. Or perhaps it is something we do not understand. Over the next 2 days, more teams examined the Sentinel. Each discovery added to the growing confusion. Military analyst Krevthor was assigned to study the ship's tactical systems. He was an expert in warfare, having planned dozens of successful Krethic campaigns. But the Sentinel confused him completely. "The weapons placement is all wrong," he told his team. "They have excellent firing arcs, yes, but they have sacrificed offensive power for defensive coverage. This ship is built to protect other vessels, not to destroy enemy fleets." He pulled up the tactical database and studied the simulations stored there. Human battle doctrine was unlike anything he had seen before. Krethic tactics focused on overwhelming force, on destroying enemies quickly and efficiently. Human tactics focused on minimizing casualties, on protecting civilian ships, on controlling space without excessive destruction. One simulation caught his attention. It showed a human fleet defending a convoy of refugee ships from multiple species. The human warships positioned themselves between the refugees and the attackers, taking damage to protect vessels that were not even their own. In Krethic doctrine, refugees were acceptable losses. You saved military assets and abandoned the weak. But humans fought differently. They fought to save everyone. Krevthor found another file that disturbed him deeply. It was a first contact protocol, a detailed guide for meeting new alien species. The document was thorough and carefully written. It covered communication methods, cultural sensitivity, conflict resolution, and diplomatic procedures. But what struck Krevthor was the underlying philosophy. The protocol assumed that new species should be approached with respect and caution. It assumed that peaceful contact was always preferable to conflict. It assumed that different species could cooperate and build mutual understanding. The Krethic had a first contact protocol too. It was much simpler. Assess the species' strength. If they are weak, conquer them. If they are strong, avoid them until you become stronger. This is not a military philosophy, Krevthor muttered to himself. This is something else entirely. Meanwhile, other scientists were making their own discoveries. The engineering team found detailed repair manuals for dozens of alien ship designs. The humans had clearly studied other species' technology extensively, but not to find weaknesses. They had studied it to learn how to help, how to repair damaged vessels and save stranded crews. The medical team was perhaps most disturbed by what they found. Dr. Jalkor, the station's chief physician, examined the medical bay with increasing amazement. "They have treatment protocols for over 40 different species," she reported, "including species they have barely encountered. They have researched alien biology extensively, learned how to treat injuries and illnesses in beings completely different from themselves." She held up a medical kit designed for Krethic physiology. "They even have supplies for us. They prepared to save Krethic lives even though our species have barely interacted. Why would they do this?" The communications officer discovered something equally revealing. The Sentinel's database contained extensive linguistic data. Universal translators, cultural databases, diplomatic language guides. The humans were not just trying to communicate with other species. They were trying to understand them, to build bridges across the vast differences between worlds. By the third day, Commander Vextal called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. The room was filled with scientists, military analysts, and strategic advisors. Everyone looked uncomfortable. Everyone had seen things that challenged their understanding of the galaxy. "We need to discuss what we have learned," Vextal began, "and more importantly, what it means for the Dominion." Corvin stood and activated a presentation. Images of the Sentinel appeared on the screens, highlighting different sections. "This vessel represents a fundamental challenge to Krethic philosophy. We built our empire on a simple principle: the strong survive and dominate. The weak perish or serve. Resources go to those who can take them and hold them." He paused, letting his words sink in. Humans reject this principle completely. They believe in protecting the weak. They believe in helping those who cannot help themselves. They build warships not to conquer, but to defend. Not just themselves, but everyone. That is foolish, one admiral said. That is a waste of resources. Is it? Krevthor asked quietly. I have studied their tactical effectiveness. Human crews are extremely loyal. They fight with exceptional determination. Other species trust them quickly. When humans offer alliance, other species accept readily because they believe humans will actually protect them. He displayed data on the screen. 3 minor species have already formed defensive pacts with Earth, not because humans threatened them, but because humans offered genuine protection. These species give humans access to resources, strategic locations, and intelligence willingly. Vextal saw where this was going. You are saying their weakness is actually a form of strength. I am saying their philosophy is effective, Krevthor replied. And more importantly, it is appealing. Our subject species serve us because they fear us. They give us resources because we force them. But they hate us. They would rebel if they could. Corvin nodded. If those species learn about humans, if they see this alternative, what do you think will happen? Our empire is held together by fear and force. But fear breaks when a stronger protector appears. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implication. We are not threatened by human weapons, Corvin continued. We are threatened by human ideas, by their philosophy, by the example they set. If other species believe they can be protected instead of dominated, our entire empire will collapse. Dr. Jalcor spoke up, her voice troubled. I have been thinking about the mining colony, the one the humans were trying to save. How many colonists were there? 3,000, Vextal said. We deemed them too expensive to rescue. And the humans were willing to risk a valuable warship and hundreds of crew members to save them, Jalcor said. To save Krethic lives, our own people, whom we abandoned. The implications hung heavy in the air. If that story spread, if Krethic citizens learned that humans tried to save them while their own government left them to die, the damage would be catastrophic. Vextal made his decision. We need to destroy Earth, not because we cannot defeat them militarily. We probably can. But we cannot allow their philosophy to spread. We cannot let our subjects and allies see this alternative. He looked around the room. Prepare the fleet. We strike Earth's home system within the month. Complete destruction. No survivors to spread their ideas. The meeting ended. As everyone filed out, Corvin remained behind. He looked at the images of the Sentinel one last time. We examined their warship, he said quietly to himself. And now we know we are doomed. The war room of Station Krell 9 was filled with holographic displays showing star charts and fleet positions. Commander Vextal stood at the center, surrounded by his senior officers. They were planning the attack on Earth, calculating forces and trajectories. It should have been a simple military exercise, but nothing about this situation was simple. We can assemble a strike force of 200 vessels within 3 weeks, Admiral Krellfon reported. Earth's home defense fleet numbers only 70 ships. We will have overwhelming superiority. What about their allies? Someone asked. Minimal threat, Krellvon replied. The 3 species allied with Earth have small military forces. They will not affect the outcome significantly. Vextal nodded, but he felt no satisfaction. Victory in battle was not the issue. The real problem was much deeper, much more dangerous. Corvin had been right. They were not fighting against human weapons. They were fighting against human ideas, and ideas were far harder to destroy than ships. What about information control? Vextal asked. Can we prevent word of this attack from spreading? Can we control the narrative? The intelligence officer looked uncertain. Difficult, Commander. We have 16 subject species across hundreds of worlds. Communication networks are extensive. If we attack Earth without clear provocation, many will question the decision." Vextal felt frustration building. The Krethic Empire had ruled through fear and strength for centuries. They had conquered dozens of species, forced them into submission, taken their resources. It had always worked before. Why was this different? Because humans offered something the Krethic never had: hope, protection, a different way of existing in the galaxy. Meanwhile, in another section of the station, the crew of the Sentinel was causing unexpected problems. The escape pods had been recovered by a Krethic patrol ship, the vessel commanded by Captain Jen Rak. The humans were supposed to be prisoners, held for interrogation and eventual disposal. That was standard procedure. But things had not gone according to procedure. Jen Rak sat in his quarters, reviewing reports from his crew with growing confusion. The human prisoners were not behaving like prisoners. From the moment they came aboard, they had been helpful, cooperative, and strangely kind. When several Krethic crew members were injured during the pod recovery, a human medic named Dr. Choi Hana had immediately asked to help. Jen Rak had allowed it, curious to see what she would do. She had treated the injured Krethic with the same care she would give her own people, using techniques that Krethic medicine did not possess. She had saved the life of his second officer, Krelmar, who would have died from internal bleeding. "Why did you help him?" Jen Rak had asked her. Dr. Choi had looked at him with genuine confusion. "Because he was hurt, because I could help. Why would I not?" It made no sense to Jen Rak. These humans were prisoners. The Krethic were their enemies. Yet they acted as if such distinctions did not matter when someone needed help. Then the raider attack had happened. A group of pirates had ambushed Jen Rak's ship, trying to steal valuable cargo. The battle was going badly. Jen Rak was outnumbered and outgunned. His ship was taking serious damage. Lieutenant Commander Park Min-jun had approached him during the fight. The human officer had spoken calmly despite the chaos around them. "Captain Jen Rak, my crew and I request permission to help defend your ship. We are trained combat personnel. We can assist with weapon systems and damage control." Jen Rak had stared at him in disbelief. "You are prisoners. Why would you help us?" Park had smiled slightly. "Because if your ship is destroyed, we all die. Because defending people in danger is what we do. Because it is the right thing to do." Against his better judgment, Jen Rak had agreed. The humans had fought alongside his crew with remarkable skill and dedication. They had helped drive off the raiders. Afterward, Park and his engineers had helped repair critical systems, preventing the ship from losing life support. Now Jen Rak sat in his quarters, trying to understand what had happened. His crew was talking about the humans constantly. Several had become friends with the prisoners, sharing meals and stories. The humans had not tried to escape. They had not caused trouble. They had simply helped wherever they could. Krelmar, his second officer, knocked and entered. "Captain, we are approaching Station Krell 9. We will arrive in 6 hours. "Good," Jen Rak said. "The humans will be transferred to the station for interrogation." Krelmar hesitated. "Captain, permission to speak freely?" "Granted." "The humans saved my life. Dr. Choi worked for hours to stabilize my injuries. She did not have to do that. She could have let me die." "She is a doctor," Jen Rak said. "It is her function to heal. But I am Krethic. We are her enemies. Yet she treated me with kindness and respect." Krelmar paused. "Captain, everything we have been taught about strength and weakness, about survival and domination. What if we have been wrong?" Jen Rak did not answer. He could not, because he was thinking the same thing. Back on Station Krell 9, Corvin was conducting more research. He had accessed every piece of data about human history he could find. He studied their wars, their societies, their philosophies. What he discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans had not always been peaceful. Their history was filled with conflict and violence. They had fought terrible wars among themselves, causing immense suffering. But they had learned from those wars. They had developed concepts like human rights, international law, and mutual cooperation. They had learned that protecting the weak was not weakness. It was civilization. Corvin found records of human disasters, natural catastrophes that had killed thousands. But he also found records of how humans responded. They rushed to help. They sent rescue teams and supplies. They risked their own lives to save strangers, not because it was profitable or strategic, but because they believed it was right. He found political speeches by human leaders. One in particular struck him deeply. It was from a leader named Kim Seo-yeon, now an admiral in Earth's fleet. She had spoken about humanity's place in the galaxy. "We have seen terrible things in our own history. We have learned hard lessons about the cost of hatred and division. We go into space with one purpose above all others, to be better than we were, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to build a galaxy where no one is left to die alone in the darkness." Corvin read those words several times. Then he went to find Commander Vextal. He found the commander in the strategy room, still planning the attack on Earth. Corvin entered quietly and waited to be acknowledged. "What is it, Corvin?" Vextal asked without looking up from the star charts. "Commander, I need to show you something important." Corvin displayed the information he had gathered. The history, the philosophy, the speeches. Vextal watched in silence, his expression growing darker. "Do you see the pattern?" Corvin asked. "Humans are not weak. They are not foolish. They have made a conscious choice to value compassion and cooperation, and it makes them stronger, not weaker. Their alliances are genuine. Their crews are loyal. Their reputation is growing. So we destroy them before they become too strong," Vextal said. "Can we?" Corvin asked. "Even if we win militarily, we cannot destroy what they represent. Commander, our empire is built on fear. Our subjects obey because they have no choice. Our allies cooperate because we threaten them. But humans offer something we cannot. They offer genuine protection, genuine partnership." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "If we attack Earth without provocation, our own people will question us. Our subjects will see us as aggressors attacking those who tried to help us. The mining colony, Commander, 3,000 Krethik who we abandoned. The humans tried to save them." Vextal slammed his hand on the table. "What would you have me do? Allow humans to spread their philosophy? Watch our empire crumble as our subjects flock to Earth's protection?" "I am saying we may already be too late," Corvin replied quietly. "The moment we captured that ship, the moment we examined it and learned what it represented, we were doomed. Not to destruction, but to change. We cannot remain as we are. The galaxy is changing around us." Before Vextal could respond, an alarm sounded. The communications officer's voice came through the station intercom. "Commander Vextal, we have multiple contacts approaching the station. Long-range sensors identify them as human vessels. They are not in attack formation." Vextal and Corvin rushed to the command center. The main display showed a fleet of 15 human ships approaching steadily. At the center was a large vessel, marked as a fleet carrier. A transmission came through. A human woman appeared on screen, wearing an admiral's uniform. Her expression was calm and professional. "This is Admiral Kim Seo-yeon of the United Nations Space Force. We understand you have our people from the UNSS Sentinel. We are here to retrieve them peacefully. We are also here to render assistance to the Krethik mining colony on Delta 7. No one should die alone in the darkness." Vextal stared at the screen. The humans had come. Not for conquest, not for revenge. They had come to save Krethik lives that the Krethik themselves had abandoned. Corvin spoke quietly beside him. "What do we do now, Commander?" The command center of Station Krell 9 was completely silent. Every officer stared at the main display, watching the human fleet approach. Admiral Kim Seo-yeon's face remained on screen, patient and calm, waiting for a response. Commander Vextal felt the weight of the moment crushing down on him. His hand hovered over the alert button that would scramble the Krethik defense fleet. He had superior numbers. He could win this fight. But could he really? Commander, his tactical officer said quietly, the human fleet is maintaining a non-aggressive posture. They are broadcasting their intentions on all frequencies. They claim they are here for a rescue mission. I heard their message, Vextal said coldly. Prepare our fleet for combat. If they make any hostile moves, we destroy them. Wait, Corvin said urgently. Commander, think about what you are doing. If we fire first, if we attack a rescue mission, we confirm everything the humans represent. We prove that we value domination over life. Vextal turned to the scientist angrily. They are invading our space. They are responding to a distress call, the same distress call we ignored. Before Vextal could respond, another transmission came through. Captain Jenrak's ship had just arrived at the station. His face appeared on a secondary screen. Commander Vextal, I am transmitting my full report on the human prisoners. You need to see this before you make any decisions. The report began playing. Vextal watched as Jenrak described everything that had happened. The humans helping injured Krethik crew members. Dr. Choi saving Krelmar's life. Lieutenant Park and his people fighting alongside Krethik soldiers to defend the ship from raiders. These humans had every reason to let us die, Jenrak said in the recording. We were their captors. We were planning to interrogate and likely execute them. Yet they helped us anyway. They risked their own lives to save ours. Commander, I have fought for the Dominion for 20 years. I have never seen anything like this. The report ended. Vextal stood frozen, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to attack, to defend Krethik supremacy, but he could feel the situation slipping away from him. Not because of human weapons, but because of something far more powerful. Admiral Kim's voice came through the speakers again. Commander Vextal, I understand this is a difficult situation. We mean no disrespect to Krethik's sovereignty, but we received a distress call from your mining colony 3 weeks ago. We know you decided the rescue was not economically viable. We respect your decision, but we cannot ignore people who are dying when we have the ability to help. She paused, letting her words sink in. We are willing to coordinate with your forces. We can work together to save your people. But with or without your permission, we will attempt the rescue. Some things are more important than politics or territory. Vextal felt rage and helplessness mixing inside him. The humans were forcing his hand. If he attacked, he became the villain. If he allowed the rescue, he admitted weakness. Corvin spoke quietly. Commander, there is a third option. What? Vextal snapped. We join them. We help rescue our own colonists. We show our people that the Dominion does not abandon its own. It is too late, Vextal said bitterly. We already abandoned them weeks ago. Everyone knows this. Then we change, Corvin replied. We admit we were wrong. We do better. Vextal looked at the scientist as if he were insane. Admit weakness? Admit error? That was not how the Krethik operated. That was not how empires survived. But another part of his mind was calculating rapidly. His empire was already fracturing. The capture of the Sentinel had started a process he could not stop. Jenrak's crew was talking. Scientists who had examined the human ship were questioning Krethik philosophy. Word was spreading. If he attacked the humans now, without clear justification, his own people might rebel. Subject species would see him as a tyrant attacking rescuers. But if he cooperated, if he helped save the colonists, he might salvage some credibility. It was a choice between bad options. But perhaps Corvin was right. Perhaps cooperation was the least damaging path. Open a channel to Admiral Kim, Vextal ordered. His voice sounded tired, defeated. The Admiral's face appeared on screen again. Vextal forced himself to speak calmly. Admiral, I am Commander Vextal of the Krethic Dominion. Your crew from the Sentinel is safe. We will return them to you unharmed. He saw relief flash across her face. Thank you, Commander. That is welcome news. Regarding the mining colony, Vextal continued, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. The Dominion does not have sufficient resources for a rescue operation at this time. If you are willing to attempt it, we will not interfere. We will provide you with full data on the colony's location and status. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. We appreciate your cooperation, Commander. However, I would like to propose something different. This is a Krethic colony with Krethic citizens. Your people should be part of their rescue. I am offering to work together on this operation. Vextal stared at her. She was offering him a way to save face, a chance to participate in saving his own people. It was generous. It was unexpected. It was very human. Why? He asked. Why would you include us when you could handle this alone? Admiral Kim smiled slightly. Because they are your people, Commander. Because we believe in cooperation over competition. Because building trust starts somewhere, and it might as well start today. Vextal made his decision. Very well, Admiral. We will coordinate with your forces. I will assign Captain Genrak and his ship to work with your fleet. He has experience with your people and can facilitate cooperation. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Human and Krethic crews met via communication channels, sharing data and coordinating plans. The mining colony was in desperate condition. Life support was failing. Thousands of Krethic colonists were running out of time. Lieutenant Park Min-jun was returned to Admiral Kim's flagship. Dr. Choi and the other crew members were reunited with their own people. But something unexpected happened. Krell Mar, the Krethic officer whose life Dr. Choi had saved, asked to speak with her before she left. The human doctor and the Krethic officer met in a docking bay. Station security watched carefully, but the meeting was peaceful. I wanted to thank you, Krell Mar said. You saved my life when you had no reason to, when I was your enemy. Dr. Choi shook her head. You were never my enemy. You were someone who needed help. That is all that mattered. Why? Krell Mar asked. Why do humans think this way? We have been taught that strength is everything, that the weak must be discarded. But you show us something different. We learned some hard lessons in our history, Dr. Choi replied. We learned that real strength is not about dominating others. It is about protecting them. It is about making the choice to help even when it is difficult or dangerous. Krell Mar was silent for a moment. I do not know if the Dominion can change. Our ways are old and deeply rooted. All change starts with one person, Dr. Choi said gently, with one choice. You can be that person if you want to be. Meanwhile, the Joint Rescue Fleet was preparing to depart for the mining colony. Admiral Kim stood on her bridge reviewing the final preparations. Commander Vextal appeared on her communication screen. Admiral, our ships are ready. Captain Genrak will coordinate with your forces. Thank you, Commander. We will save your people. Vextal nodded slowly. Admiral, I must ask you something. Why are you really doing this? What do you gain from saving Krethic colonists? Admiral Kim looked at him with sincere eyes. We gain the knowledge that we did the right thing, Commander. We gain the possibility of future cooperation. We gain the hope that maybe someday the galaxy can be a place where no one dies alone in the darkness. She paused. And perhaps you gain something too. The chance to see your people in a different light. The chance to change. The transmission ended. Vextal stood alone in his command center watching the joint fleet depart toward the mining colony. Corvin entered quietly and stood beside him. We examined their warship, Corvin said softly, and we learned what they truly are, not conquerors, not tyrants, protectors, helpers, something we stopped being a long time ago. Vextal did not reply. He simply watched the ships disappear into the darkness, carrying hope to people who had been abandoned, carrying a message that was more powerful than any weapon, the message that someone cared, that someone would come, that no one had to die alone. And Vextal knew deep in his heart that his empire would never be the same. The mining colony on Delta 7 was dying when the joint fleet arrived. The main reactor had been cold for 3 weeks. Emergency power was almost gone. The colonists had been living in the darkest, coldest sections of the facility, huddling together for warmth, rationing the last scraps of food and water. They had long since stopped hoping for rescue. The Dominion had made its decision clear. They were too expensive to save. They were on their own. Then the ships arrived. 3,000 Krethic colonists watched through frost-covered windows as human and Krethic vessels entered orbit together. They watched as transport ships descended through the thin atmosphere. They watched as the airlocks opened and figures in protective suits rushed inside. Admiral Kim Seo-yeon was among the first to enter the colony. She had not needed to come personally, but she believed in leading from the front, in showing people that their lives mattered enough for an admiral to risk herself. The conditions inside were worse than the reports suggested. The colonists were weak from hunger and cold. Many were sick. Children cried in the darkness. The elderly lay still, too tired to move. Medical teams, priority 1, Admiral Kim ordered into her communication device. Get warming stations set up immediately. Food and water distribution begins now. Engineering teams, assess the reactor situation. Dr. Choi was there too, along with dozens of other human medics. They moved through the colony quickly and efficiently, treating the most critical cases first. But they were not alone. Krethic medical personnel from Captain Jenrak's ship worked alongside them. One elderly Krethic colonist grabbed Dr. Choi's arm as she passed. His voice was weak and confused. You came. You actually came. But you are humans. Why would you help us? Dr. Choi knelt beside him, her face kind despite the urgency of the situation. Because you needed help. Because no one should be abandoned. Because it is the right thing to do. The old colonist began to cry. Our own people left us to die. But strangers came to save us. Across the colony, similar scenes were unfolding. Human engineers worked with Krethic technicians to restart critical systems. Lieutenant Park Min-jun led a team deep into the reactor section, assessing whether it could be repaired or if they would need to evacuate everyone. Captain Jenrak walked through the corridors with Admiral Kim. The Krethic officer was silent, his expression troubled. Finally, he spoke. Admiral, I need you to understand something. The Dominion's decision to abandon this colony was not unusual. It was logical. It was economically sound. Resources are limited. We cannot save everyone. But you can, Admiral Kim replied quietly. You have the resources. You have the technology. You choose not to because you have decided some lives are not worth the cost. That is how we have survived for centuries, Jenrak said. Efficiency, practicality, strength. Admiral Kim stopped walking and turned to face him. Captain, let me tell you about Earth's history. We had a period we call the World Wars. Millions died. Cities were destroyed. We nearly annihilated ourselves. After those wars, we made a choice. We decided that every life has value, that protecting the weak is not weakness, it is civilization. She gestured to the colonists around them. You call this efficiency. We call it cruelty. You call abandoning your people logical. We call it failure. True strength is not about letting the weak die. It is about having the courage and compassion to save them. Jenrak had no response. He had been trained his entire life to believe one thing, and now he was seeing proof that another way was possible. It was deeply unsettling. The rescue operation took 18 hours. The human ships had brought massive amounts of supplies and temporary power generators. The Krethic reactor could not be repaired quickly, but they could stabilize the colony until a permanent solution was implemented. All 3,000 colonists survived. Not one was lost. As the last transport ships lifted the weakest colonists to the medical vessels in orbit, Admiral Kim received an unexpected transmission. It was from Commander Vextal. Admiral, I am watching the reports from the colony. Your people have performed remarkably. Thank you, Commander. Your Captain Genrak and his crew were essential to the operation. We could not have done this without Krethic cooperation. Vextal was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, less certain. Admiral, I have a question for you. What happens now? You have saved our colonists. You have demonstrated your philosophy. What do you expect in return? Admiral Kim smiled. We expect nothing, Commander. We did this because it needed to be done. However, I would like to discuss future cooperation. Perhaps we can establish better communication protocols. Perhaps we can work together on other challenges. You are not angry that we captured your ship, that we held your crew? We are relieved they are safe, Admiral Kim replied. We understand you are acting to protect your interests. But perhaps we can find ways to protect everyone's interests together. Vextal ended the transmission. He sat alone in his command center, processing what had happened. In 18 hours, everything he believed about strength and power had been challenged. The humans had proven that compassion could be strength, that protecting others created loyalty and cooperation, and most dangerously, his own people had seen it. Over the next days and weeks, the changes began. The rescued colonists returned to Krethic space, but they brought stories with them. Stories of humans who risked their lives for strangers. Stories of cooperation between species. Stories that spread like fire through the Dominion's networks. Captain Genrak submitted a formal report recommending that Krethic military doctrine be revised to include humanitarian principles. 3 other ship captains who had heard about the rescue signed the same report. It was unprecedented. Krelmar, the officer whose life Dr. Choi had saved, requested a transfer to diplomatic services. He wanted to build relationships with other species, to learn from them. Dozens of other young Krethic officers made similar requests. The subject species under Krethic control began asking questions. If humans could protect strangers, could they protect oppressed populations? 3 minor species sent secret diplomatic inquiries to Earth, asking about the possibility of alliances. Commander Vextal watched his empire beginning to change, and he realized Corvin had been right all along. They had examined Earth's warship and discovered they were doomed. Not doomed to destruction, but doomed to transformation. He could have fought it. He could have tried to suppress the information, silence the dissent, crush the growing movement for change. But he had seen what humans could do. He had seen the alternative they offered, and deep down, he was tired of ruling through fear. 6 months later, Vextal did something no Krethic commander had done in 300 years. He called for a Dominion assembly, inviting representatives from every species under Krethic control. It was a controversial decision that many in the Dominion opposed. The assembly was chaotic. Voices were raised, accusations were made, but slowly, painfully, changes began. The Dominion started reforming its policies. Subject species were given more autonomy. Resources were allocated not just to the strong, but to those in need. It was difficult and messy, but it was happening. Admiral Kim attended the assembly as an observer, at Vextal's invitation. On the final day, the Krethic commander asked to speak with her privately. They met in a quiet garden on the station, an unusual space filled with plants from dozens of different worlds. Vexatal looked older than he had 6 months ago, worn down by the weight of change. "Admiral, I wanted to thank you, and to apologize." "For what, Commander?" "For everything. For capturing your ship. For planning to attack Earth. For being what we were." He paused. "When we examined the Sentinel, when we learned what it represented, I knew we were doomed. I thought I meant doomed to defeat. But I was wrong. We were doomed to becoming better than we were." Admiral Kim smiled. "It is never too late to change, Commander. Never too late to choose compassion over cruelty." "It is hard," Vextal admitted. "Many resist. They say we are becoming weak, that we are betraying our traditions." "Change is always hard," Admiral Kim replied. "But you have already taken the most difficult step. You have admitted that another way is possible. Everything else follows from that." They stood together in silence, watching the diverse plants growing side by side. Each species different, each requiring different care, but all thriving together in the same garden. "Tell me, Admiral," Vextal asked, "in your personal log, what will you write about all of this?" Admiral Kim thought for a moment. "I will write that we encountered a species that had lost their way, that valued strength over kindness, efficiency over compassion. But when shown an alternative, they had the courage to change. That is not weakness, Commander. That is the greatest strength of all." Vextal nodded slowly. He pulled out his own recording device and began to speak, creating a final entry in his personal log. "We examined Earth's warship and instantly knew we were doomed, not to conquest, but to transformation. They showed us that strength without compassion is just another form of weakness. They showed us that protecting the weak is not foolishness but civilization. They did not destroy us with weapons. They destroyed everything we built our empire upon and replaced it with something we never imagined we could become." He paused, looking up at the stars visible through the garden's transparent dome. "I realize now that doom and salvation may be the same thing. We are doomed to become better. Doomed to learn that every life has value. Doomed to discover that the galaxy is not a place of endless conflict, but a place where different species can work together, protect each other, and build something greater than any of us alone. The Krethic dominion is ending, but perhaps something better is beginning, and we have humans to thank for that, or perhaps to blame. I am still not certain which is correct, but I am grateful nonetheless." The recording ended. Vextal looked at Admiral Kim. "What do we do now?" "Now?" Admiral Kim smiled. "Now we build the future together, one choice at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one life saved at a time, until the entire galaxy understands that no one should die alone in the darkness. And in the garden where plants from 100 worlds grew together in harmony, two leaders from different species stood side by side, looking up at the stars and imagining a better future. A future that had begun when the Krethic examined a human warship and learned what true strength really meant.